Hey folks, this is Kalani. We're going to have a little talk about PvP, because PvP is potentially changing quite a lot in Legion. It's going to be a bigger, potentially better split between PvE and PvP, so they're kind of pulling them apart a little bit more than they have done previously. The main way in which they're going to do this is with the new talent system. So PvP is going to get their own talent system, completely separate from PvE, to the point where PvP talents are not going to work outside of PvP areas, meaning that you won't get any of the bonuses from the PvP talents in PvE. Which also means that all of the PvP orientated abilities and talents in the current talent system, or the PvE talent system, will be pulled out of there, meaning that PvE is going to get more talents, hopefully. I mean, I hope they don't just like pull them out and just do nothing about it. I do hope we get some new shiny ones in there as well. But that means that they're moving away from PvE affecting PvP quite as much, and obviously vice versa. So we know that they'll be split, but we don't really know a great deal about these talents. We know some of them are going to be flat bonuses, and we know that you'll have to choose. So it's going to be 3 rows of talents like the system we have now, and you'll choose which ones you get. But you'll need to unlock these talents by progressing through PvP. So instead of being strictly gear progressive, PvP will now be experience progressive, basically, and you'll get honor levels, and as you get these honor levels, you'll get new talents, you'll get access to new talents, and eventually you'll get access to the new rows of talents, so you have more choices. So the examples that we were shown include things like static increases to stats, like spell haste increased by 15% with mind quickness, variations on current abilities, abolish magic would replace dispel magic and basically dispel all magic every 2 seconds for 6 seconds with a 20-second cooldown. Going to be very powerful indeed. And then we have old things coming back like Death Knight's Necrotic Strike, which everyone will know you put an absorb on the target which absorbs incoming healing. So there's a variation there from what we can see, where they'll bring back old things, tweak current things, and introduce some new things. So there's a lot to be excited there with PvP talents. I'm really curious to see what they can bring into the game, especially if they can change the way you play depending on the PvP talent that you choose. There was also some talk of your PvP trinket, the removes all disable stuns, etc., that effect, being on one of these talents, but I'm not entirely sure they'd put that in. That seems very much like a guaranteed yes please. So that's completely unconfirmed, just saw that floating around a bit, maybe worth mentioning. Now, I also mentioned that they're moving slightly away from gear progression, and that definitely seems to be the case, because apparently the best geared player in PvP will only have around a 10% advantage, give or take, on a completely fresh level 110. So the difference between you starting PvP right at the start of an expansion and the very tippy top gear you could ever get in the expansion is only going to be 10% in PvP. That means that any and all gear that you get will be scaled down in PvP, so even if you're a Mythic Raider in the last tier of the expansion, you're still only going to be a little bit more powerful than somebody who's just starting out, meaning that you don't have that huge gear curve. You don't have to be playing through the entire expansion, to PvP towards the end. If you come in towards the end of the expansion and think, oh, you know what, I fancy some PvP, there's no huge, massive wall to get over to actually start feeling useful in PvP. You don't have your resilience gear anymore, you don't have your PvP power, anything like that. All of those stats are being done away with, and there won't be specific PvP gear. And any gear you get from PvE isn't going to completely dominate the PvP scene. So it works a lot better if you're one of the people who don't necessarily PvP all the time, but you get a little bored and you think, ooh, I fancy doing a battleground or two. You don't have that, oh, but wait, I'll completely ruin our chances of doing anything useful or capturing anything or actually winning the battleground because I don't have this PvP gear. I haven't been PvPing throughout the expansion. So there's the lack of that, which is pretty fantastic. That allows new players, all players, people who don't PvP, to just jump into a battleground and not feel completely useless. While all that's fine and dandy, what then happens to PvP gear? Because if you have stats being scaled down anyway, is there any point in giving these PvP players gear which is on par with PvE gear? Because they're not going to be using the stats that they get, it's all going to be scaled down. But then obviously the argument comes, if you don't give them the gear on par with PvE, they can't do the same thing. You know, PvEers can get PvP gear and be a little bit more powerful. They can be on par with PvP players, hop into a battleground and do the exact same thing. Whereas PvPers wouldn't be able to, unless their gear is on par with PvE gear. Then there's also the problem of having them being the same power, or at least their character upgrading in power, which is not just important for, you know, actually progressing your character personally and feeling like you're getting more powerful, but for any questing past 110, you want to be getting gear to kill things faster and essentially be more efficient on what you're doing. So PvP gear is going to need to have some whammy behind it, as at least something nearly on par with PvE gear. I don't see any point in why they wouldn't do that, but then you have two avenues for gear for PvE. So you've got two chests, for example. The PvP one is actually got better stats. You know, it's got your best stats instead of one of your best stats and one of your bad stats, which the PvE chest has. Oh, I need to go do PvP to get this battleground, you know, get this honor and get this chest. Which is bad, potentially. Forcing PvEers into PvP because that item, gear, whatever it is better is going to be kind of dangerous. But at least weapons won't be anything to worry about because you've got your artifacts. PvP is going to let you increase the power of your artifact, but we don't know exactly how. So we don't know how that artifact is going to get more powerful, but we do know that you can do it in PvE, you can do it in PvP, and you can do it pretty much however you want to do it through the different methods of playing the game. Not entirely sure at what rate that's going to be. Obviously, if the PvE goes at a faster rate than PvE, people are going to PvP to PvE once again. So they'll have to do a lot of balancing here, and not entirely confident they'll get it right the first time. So we'll have to see how all that shapes up, because, as I say, they're rocking the boat quite a bit. So the two big things here is that basically you're removing PvP gear and all the stats there, meaning that anybody can jump into PvP and be just as useful, but then they're also making that divide, that PvE-PvP split with the talents. Things are going to be different, things are going to work different in each of those two areas. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how they pull this off. A lot more people are hopefully going to be jumping into battlegrounds. They'll be more useful, they'll feel like they're actually getting something done. More people have fun, everybody's happy. So we'll just have to see what Blizzard has in store for us with Legion Beta. Definitely want my hands on beta so we can try out some of this new PvP nonsense. Let's see how things go. What about you? How do you feel about this change to PvP? Will you pop into PvP more often, or are you going to be less of a PvPer than you were because all these casuals will be clogging up your battlegrounds? I don't know, that could work either way, I guess. But that's it for this video. If you have any questions, queries, theories, anything to discuss, leave it down in the comment section below and we'll have a good old chinwag down there. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.